Term 1, Part 2, Australian Aboriginal Beliefs and Spiritualities, The Dreaming. Syllabus dot point 2.1, The Nature of the Dreaming. Our to-do list: outline the nature of the dreaming in relation to origins of the universe, sacred sites, stories of the dreaming, symbolism and art. Before we begin looking at the next slides, pause this video and write down those 3 glossary terms in the back of your booklets.
So what is Aboriginal spirituality? Firstly, think about what you already know about the topic. You might have learnt about Aboriginal spirituality in the past, and you might have heard stories through the media. So what are some of the things you already know about this term Aboriginal or Aboriginal spirituality? If you've learnt about Aboriginal spiritualities before, you would have heard of this key term called the dreaming. The dreaming is not about having dreams at night time, but instead it's a central concept to Aboriginal spiritualities, and it's something that we're going to explore through this video. The dreaming is expressed through many aspects of life. In fact, it's arguably expressed through all aspects of an Aboriginal person's life. And it involves the past, the present, and the future. So firstly, click on the link and watch the video. We'd like you to make some notes on the video that you watch. And if you also take a look at the wheel that's to the left of the screen, you should be able to see a lot of key terms which are explained through the video.
The dreaming for Aboriginal peoples is a living spirituality. It is made up of many complex dimensions. For Aboriginal people, the dreaming can explain the origins of the universe, the workings of nature, cycle of life and death. It also shapes and structures Aboriginal life by regulating kinship. Kinship is the ties and the relationships they have with one another. And we'll look at this term more in the next slides. The dreaming also guides ceremonial life and the relationship between male and female. It has a network of obligations involving people, land and spirits. And it even affects the rights of the Aboriginal people to land through certain sacred sites.
So, as mentioned before, the dreaming is a term that is used to describe the central concept which underpins all beliefs and practices within Aboriginal communities. So for Aboriginal peoples, the dreaming represents all knowledge and understanding of their own society. The dreaming determines all relationships and all responsibilities for the Aboriginal peoples. Because Australia is such a large continent, with vast differences between certain different areas of land, for example, we have red and dry deserts in the middle of Australia, but we have rainforests at the top end of Australia, it is easy to understand why Australia also has a diverse array of Indigenous communities. And in fact, Australia has over 250 language groups, at least at the time of European settlement, some of which no longer exist. And no 2 language groups are entirely identical in belief, obviously because they come from different landscapes, different environments. So the dreaming is a common link between every different Aboriginal community, but because of their differences, especially in geographic location, the dreaming is different for each language group.
This graph here shows the 3 different worlds that come from the dreaming: the human world, the physical world, and the sacred world. You can see that in the middle of this triangle is the word land. Land is the physical medium where the dreaming is able to be expressed. Let's look at the human world first. The human world encompasses people, people's behavior and rules of behavior, family relationships, and a key term here is kinship, and ritual actions.
So you can see from the diagram that there's a clear link between ritual actions and the land. Just think about how ritual actions might interact with the land. And so obviously at its most basic level, the ritual actions have to take place inside or on the land, but there's actually so much more deeper meaning to that. Just look at the image in the top left of screen, for example. So these people are not only performing a ritual on the land, but it's likely that they are performing a ritual about the land, how they interact with the land, and how the land interacts with them, and how they also interact with the physical world and the sacred world.
The second dimension is the physical world. Now, the physical world talks about animals, the sky, the plants, and all these are used in the dreaming. For example, certain animals can relate to certain Aboriginal peoples, and this is called a totemic relationship. So this totem or this symbol of an animal or of a particular land site gives responsibilities to that Aboriginal person. The certain animal becomes significant in a sense that it guides them throughout life. It becomes their spiritual totem. Pause this video now and define the word totem in your glossary bank at the back of your booklet.
Certain people have their own totems, but typically Aboriginal communities will share a specific totem. And this could be a plant, this could be an animal, but that animal or that plant is considered so sacred that in some cases they can't hunt those animals, they can't gather those plants, they can't destroy those plants, and in some cases they can't even draw those plants because they're considered to be so sacred. And the last dimension, the sacred world, revolves mainly around spirits, which are also referred to as the Ancestor Spirits or the ancestral beings. So current Indigenous communities will tell stories about these ancestral spirits, possibly about how they created the universe or how they created a sacred space, or they might tell a story of a moral story, for example, where in the past someone has, after performing some action, there's been some sort of punishment, which then hopes to deter the rest of the community from breaking these laws which the spirits have created, and then therefore the Aboriginal people won't be punished for breaking those laws. And there's also properties of perhaps seeing the future or healing based on their connection to these spirits.
The dreaming and the origins of the universe, how the world came into being through the actions of the ancestral spirit beings. Example, how was the physical world created? How are the animals and the plants created? The dreaming allows for dreamtime stories to come into play, and these dreamtime stories tell us of how the land was shaped. For example, think of the rainbow serpent. These dreamtime stories are not regarded as myths by Aboriginal people, but they are metatemporal concepts which incorporates the past, present and future. It continues on in the cycle of creation. It is a complete and present reality.
So the dreaming is not regarded as a myth. It's not considered something that's been made up. It's not a false story. It's in fact considered to be a historical account of the events which help shape the present and also the future as well. So even though most stories reflect on what happened in the past, it is really important to acknowledge that it's a continuing, it has a continuing effect on the present and the future as well. Now, as we mentioned, the land is the physical medium through which the dreaming is lived, through which it is communicated, through which it is expressed. And so the dreaming is inextricably connected to the land. They cannot be separated, which is why when Aboriginal children were separated from their families, firstly, but also from the land during the stolen generations, they essentially lost everything about their life. And we'll look at that a little bit further later. But particular sites, we call those sacred sites, they have a special significance for Aboriginal groups because they're deeply connected with events from the dreaming. So particular groups of Aboriginal people have special responsibilities to care for and to learn about these sites, such as by carrying out prescribed rituals to help the longevity of those sacred sites.
The dreaming and the stories of the dreaming, also known as the dream time. For Aboriginal communities, the telling and learning of Dreamtime stories is a lifelong process. This process is revealed through many aspects of Aboriginal society, such as kinship, song, dance, art, ritual, and storytelling. Now, kinship is defined as this. Basically, it is how one Aboriginal person is related to another. Through this relation, they have roles and responsibilities that govern and guide their living. These roles can be towards other people, towards the land, and natural resources. Also, these relations have hierarchies within each language group that they belong to. Please pause this video and define kinship in your glossary bank at the back of your booklet.
Now we want you to look deeper into a few traditional Aboriginal Dreamtime stories. And Dust Echoes, which has been put out by the ABC, is a fantastic resource which will allow you to look at some videos. If you want to extend on that, you can also answer questions. You can read through the stories, but there's a lot that you can do, so much more than what I've just said, if you click on the link and follow that to Dust Echoes.
The dreaming and symbolism and art. Symbolism in art allows for the explanation of creation stories. It tells us how the natural world came into being, and it also guides the laws that Aboriginal peoples have. Symbolism and art is also a way of teaching Aboriginal children about right and wrong behaviour in society. So art becomes a means of understanding ethics. One must be careful that symbolism in art has multiple layers of meaning, and so for people that are not of the Aboriginal society, the understanding or the meaning of the artwork may be confused or may be difficult to understand. Symbolism in art is also expressed physically through the land. So the land is the medium, such as cave paintings or songlines, for example, where art is portrayed in order to express things about the created world and laws and ethics. Pause this video now to define the word songlines in your glossary bank at the back of your booklet.
So now that we've come to the end of the video, and you should have a good understanding of the origins of the universe, sacred sites, stories and symbolism in relation to the dreaming, To prepare yourself for the next dot point, or one of our next dot points, just ask yourself the question, why is the dreaming important for Aboriginal peoples? And write down 3 points to answer that question.